Good morning, my brothers and sisters. There's always a new challenge, and today we're going to go over the Lightfall raid, and I'm going to give my thoughts on all the encounters. Firstly, as you can see in the background, I do want to say I completed the raid on contest with a full LFG team. Now I'm going to make a separate video on the LFG experience and contest mode later, but right now I want to focus on the raid itself. Let's move straight into the first encounter, and I'm gonna give my thoughts on it. So the first encounter, and really the first two encounters in my opinion, are a clear-cut test of your build and using the environment to your advantage. Many of my teams failed due to survivability and not maintaining the high ground in this first encounter to stay alive. Now the first encounter, and I believe this shows the beauty of the new armor mod system, is that build crafting and obtaining decent builds is widely available, and this first encounter really showcases that if you didn't have a decent build and decent weapon choice and decent armor mods, you were not going to make it through the first encounter on this raid, either in contest mode. The simplicity of the mechanic of just having, really you only need one runner and the rest of the team can just be ad clear, is really, in my opinion, beautifully done. It really forces players to maximize their builds, or at least in contest mode it did, and just try and give the runner as much leeway and clearance to get the objective done. Also, this first encounter really gives kind of a buffer zone, because you could have your runner slow down just a little bit, you know, get another tormentor to spawn and have him complete a fourth or fifth buff to pause the timer, then immediately when the timer comes back, decimate that tormentor to give yourself extra time and give that runner extra time to get through the first encounter. I also believe the unique environment and being able to actually jump on top of all of the buildings is something that needs to be done in more encounters. You know, give us more space, more verticality in the raid. Just give us more options to utilize the environment in such a way to our advantage. I really like the sandboxy feel to the first encounter. In my opinion, it was very beautifully done. Overall, I think encounter one is a very wonderful intro encounter to raiding, and is very beautiful and a very well made encounter to get a lot of new lights and new guardians, and just guardians who just don't do raiding into raiding, because it allows you to see that, well, can my build actually take the first encounter? Am I putting out damage? Can I kill the enemies? Is my build good for taking down the tormentors? Like how much effort am I putting out? Is my build up to snuff? There are so many weapon options and build options to get through the first encounter. I've seen div and snipers, div and rockets, tractor cannon and rockets. I've seen bows, snipers. I mean, there's really a lot of options to get through the first encounter and get that first chest and get something good out of it, hopefully. My ending thoughts on this encounter is that this is definitely a counter that everyone should give a go. It's really good. It's really a nice intro with very light mechanics, not many debuffs and buffs to watch out for or maintain. Just a nice big kind of horde mode encounter that we haven't seen too much of. Very beautifully done. But now we're going to move on to the second encounter, my personal favorite encounter of this raid. I know that there's, I think, two ways to get this done, and the way we did it was to have two runners just maintain their buff and just go back and forth the whole time. But now after beating it on normal, I now see that there is a more like helix kind of flowy type way to get through this, where you switch buffs constantly, and it really embodies that ideal of mixing light with darkness and switching back and forth. We didn't do that. We just kept two runners, and the two runners just ran through it the whole way. Now overall, my opinion on this encounter is that it is another wonderful encounter. To on a side note, the first two triumphs, the one where you have to kill the scions within the first 5 seconds of each other and encounter one, and avoiding the light or dark buff enemies until both sides are complete, are two of the easiest challenges to get done in this raid, and I highly suggest you get these two done as soon as possible. Likewise with the same subclass and the same class build, also two of the more easier challenges to get. Now, going up all 3 levels, moving the light and dark buff is very fun. It's also a super solid solidification of the light and dark buff mechanic in the raid, and it's super important in the 4th encounter of the raid. Overall, my opinion of this second encounter is just that it really hits home build use and survivability, but more so on the burst side than a sustaining side of build use and survivability, as you do get a slight breathing room every time you wipe the enemies and you're waiting for your buff guy to come back. But once again, the environment here is beautiful. The mechanics are easy to keep track of, and it's really just my favorite encounter of the raid, especially playing as a strand hunter. Okay guys, let's move right into the 3rd encounter. This encounter is where it stops being just a test of your build and survivability, and more so a test of you actually surviving, and more so paying attention to the mechanics of the encounter and of the raid so far, and mainly just in this encounter. In this encounter, you have to 1, survive, 2, make sure you kill all the ads, and 3, you need to kill a special enemy to get the planetary shift buff. See which planets you have to move and move them. In my opinion, this encounter is once again a good introduction into raid mechanics that you would see in all raids. There's a left side, there's a right side, there's different plates, and there's a mechanic where you have to move stuff from one side to the other to complete the objective. You see these kind of mechanics in all the raids, and in my opinion, this is a great introduction to said mechanics for all the other raids. In other raids, you have to memorize sounds, you have to memorize symbols. You don't have to do none of that here. You just need to get the buff, look up, see which planet doesn't match, and work with your team to move that planet from one side to the other until one side is fully light and the other side is fully dark, and do that until you start the damage phase. Damage him, do it again, and finish him off. It's a very straightforward encounter with very straightforward mechanics. It is a wonderfully done job. I don't know what else to call it. This raid so far is just a really well done raid in my opinion. It's not too complex, it's not too simple. It's just a nice, good, you start with a horde mode type raid, type encounter, then you move into more mechanic but still kind of horde mode type encounter, and now you're into the first boss, and it's a more mechanic driven encounter but still easy to get used to, and it's just wonderfully done. It's a very wonderfully done encounter in my opinion. All right, let's move right into the 4th encounter of the raid. This raid has to have one of the most freest bosses I have witnessed so far in Destiny 2. This guy is very mobile, he's very lethal, and it's very mechanic driven encounter that really puts everything you've done so far in the raid to the test. But once again, still a nice, very unique and very creative way of introducing new raiders to raid mechanics that you would once again see in all the other raids. You have to get his gaze, you have to shoot his shoulders to see the white mechanic. You still need runners to run the light and dark buff, and you still need ad clears to maintain the safety of the runners while also making sure you don't die to the boss and the gaze guys are doing their job. This is a very wonderful accumulation of the raid in one encounter, and in my opinion it is very well done, despite the comments about his health and everything. That's a separate issue. Overall, the raid is very well done in this encounter. Everything you've done so far in the raid leads up to this encounter, and it's really fun. It's a really fun encounter. I think, in my opinion, the hardest part of this encounter is keeping and maintaining his gaze. The running part is very straightforward. The ad clearing part is very straightforward. Maintaining gaze is the hardest part because of how mobile and lethal this guy is. This guy does a ton of damage, and he's very lethal, and the spot you have to hit to get the gaze is on his chest. The white mechanic is once again very straightforward. You did the white mechanic in the jumping puzzle. It's just, in my opinion, a very clean, very concise, very straightforward raid, and as long as you're paying attention, you can really get this done in a decent amount of time and have a decent build, and you're really good to go. There's really a lot of options here in both these boss encounters to do a ton of damage. That's one thing that's very unique about the start of this year of Lightfall, is that we have a lot of options to decimate these bosses very quickly and very expeditiously. Overall, in my opinion of this whole raid, is that it's very well done. It's a very good intro raid. The mechanics aren't that intense. The white mechanics are very straightforward. The mechanics that show you that you've done something right is very clear. It's very obvious. It's very well done. It's a very good time to really get into raiding right now with the new mod system, the new strand subclass, the new weaponry, the new perk pool, and the weapons. There's a lot of great options right now to make very strong and very powerful builds. Overall, I really enjoy this raid. It's probably one of my favorite raids so far, in terms of just the fun factor of the raid. It's not too intense. It's not too reliant on mechanics and memorization of other factors in the raid. It's just a very nice, very clean cut raid. Well, that is it for today's video, my brothers and sisters. I hope you enjoyed it. I would appreciate the feedback, and I hope to see you all in my next one. And never forget, there is always a new challenge.